Um, I wear a little device that I was given 2 years ago. And this thing is a little bit like the one Andreas was talking about. When I lay it down at night, a bunch of little lights show up on the front. It tells me how much I've walked during the day. My 8-year-old son, Jesse, asks me every night, "Dad, did you meet your goal?" When I plug it in the computer, it actually graphs my progress over the course of a month. That lets me set new goals. Just the way Andreas said that feedback changes behavior, I'm really interested in the idea of all these sensors all over the planet right now. My background is I'm a journalist. I used to work for National Geographic and Time Magazine. I started doing a series of books where I would take 100 journalists, bring them to a country, spread them out around the country and say, on your mark, get set, go, you've got 24 hours. This is an idea that's turned out by everybody in publishing. It became the best-selling photography book series in history. I got bored of doing the countries, and then we started looking at topics. How is the internet changing people's lives in the course of a day? How do you put a human face on how microprocessors are changing the world? About 7 years ago, we started opening this up to the public. So instead of just having a group of professional journalists looking at a topic, we realized everybody carries a camera with them. Everyone's now got an internet-connected device. How can we now turn these projects into huge crowdsourced projects so we have a much greater number of voices being represented? The media has always fallen in love with these projects, probably because the media works on them. Journalists love doing stories about other journalists. So the projects that we do get a lot of visibility. And when Andreas and I started talking about big data a few weeks ago, we started thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if you could do a project where you invited people all over the world to help us compile a one-day snapshot of big data, and how instead of being Big Brother, it's actually starting to change the way that we perceive the world and how we deal with the world and how we address some of the biggest problems that are facing humanity. I'm just going to show you a 2-second clip of this.
I found my next favorite thing one day when I was just going through the bookstore. One of my favorite things to do is to go to the bookstore. Y'all heard? Okay. So I found this book. It is a great gift. It's called America 24/7. It is from New York Times, #1 best-selling authors, Rick Small.
So I'll jump through that, but what made this project interesting is that we invited literally millions of people to take pictures of what America was like and to create a time capsule for their great-grandchildren. Not only were people's pictures included in the book and the TV show and the exhibit on the website, but when people got the book, they were featured on the cover. So everybody got their own individual copy of the book featuring themselves on the cover of the book. We did the same thing 2 years ago with a project where we looked at the concept of home. We had Paul McCartney and Matt Groening wrote the introductions to the books. And again, these are massive crowdsourced projects. And again, the publicity in all of these cases is really dramatic. 220 journalists showed up to the launch of this thing. Anyway, so what's next? There's 1 billion sensors right now for every single person on the planet. 30 billion RFID tags. There's 1 trillion nodes. All these machines are starting to share information, talk to each other. And these devices are now being embedded. I'm telling a lot of you things you already know, but in terms of explaining this to the general public, the idea that these devices can now collect information and share with each other, you can take databases and overlap them, allows us to get a sense of what's happening on the planet in real time. It's never been possible to human race before. But the way that the media is turning to play this and the way the average person is hearing about it is very much, and a lot of this is big data, a Big Brother, but there's something much bigger here that I think we can capture in this project. And one is the fact that looking through one eye and then looking through two, it's not giving you twice as much information. It's giving you a whole new way of perceiving things. And that's exactly what we're planning to do with this project. So data saves lives. Listen to this for a second. This is 2 weeks ago.
Even before the shaking started, millions of people in Tokyo knew this quake was coming. Japan has spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 15 years building an earthquake early warning system. Today, that investment may have paid off, as Marketplace's Steve Henn reports.
More than a minute before the ground began to shake in Tokyo, texted warnings hit millions of cell phones. Stations interrupted their broadcasts, bullet trains came to a halt, and factories got urgent emails to secure their assembly lines. It was Japan's earthquake early warning system.
I am certain that the system saved lives today.
Dr. Peggy Helwig is a seismologist at UC Berkeley. She says you can't predict quakes, but you can warn people that one's coming.
There are different kinds of waves that are radiated from an earthquake. The P waves are primary, they come first, and they travel faster than the S waves.
But S waves do the damage. So Japan's deployed thousands of sensors that detect fast-moving P waves. When those sensors feel a quake, computers calculated size, then broadcast warnings across the country. Today, that entire process took 8.6 seconds.
The Japanese have been ahead of the game.
David Oppenheimer is at the U.S. Geological Survey.
After the Kobe earthquake, they spent somewhere on the order of $500 million to install modern seismic equipment in their country.
So I won't play the whole clip, but basically a minute before the quake hit, all the bullet trains stopped, factories stopped all over Japan. I mean, the damage is just unimaginable what we've seen, but imagine how much worse it could have been. So in Haiti, a lot of you know about this, but there was a way that people could text information about, it was such a fragmented infrastructure in Haiti, unlike Japan, and people were able to use their cell phones to communicate which roads were open, where people needed help immediately. The U.S. government, one of the new policies of the Obama administration is to open up government data. So it turns out that there are companies that for years have never delivered a job on time or on budget, and yet they continue to get job after job after job. Well, now by opening up this data, you and I can look at this and say, wait a second, what's going on here? Somebody being paid off. And finally, data shifts our behavior. My brother owns a Prius, and he told me that he realized one day that the dashboard of the Prius wasn't measuring the car, it was measuring him. It was telling him how he was driving. It was telling him if he was generating power, if he was using up too much gas. And again, the Nike Plus example that Andreas used, and other devices that we're all starting to wear. We're just in the infancy of all this. So we're going to do a project this fall called Reflections in a Digital Mirror. And the idea is to use all these sensors, all these billions of nodes and devices that are communicating with each other to actually take the pulse of the planet. It's going to be a year-long project that starts on one day. First part is inviting 10 million people around the world to become human sensors. There's two aspects to that. One is downloading an app, which Andreas' students are actually going to help us with. I'm telling you all about this because I'm asking for your help. If you have interesting ideas, things that we should include, if you have technology or things you think we should do to expand the project, I'd love to hear from you about it. So part of this is collecting passive data, the decimal levels. How many images have you taken or shared today? How many phone calls have you made? How many times have you checked your email? And then active participation. Every hour you want to ask people, these 10 million people around the planet, take a photo of something you need fixing in your city. How many people have you spoken with in the last hour? How many races do you see around you right now? And again, these are just early questions. We're going to actually open up this data so people can actually take the APIs from our project and play with it and create other things on top of it. We're going to let people actually use a data construction kit so you can actually take two different data sets and discover things as you go through the project that you can name, just the way people can name stars today. We're going to invite students all over the world to do projects. I'm not going to show you this, but you probably have heard about this trash track program that the Sensibility Lab at MIT has done. They send 3,000 pieces of garbage out with sensors on them and then track what happened to that sensors afterwards. Again, I won't show this to you now. And then finally, we're going to send 1,000 journalists around the world. My mother's 87 years old. I know every morning at 9:30 in the morning she's having a cup of coffee. Intel's doing a project right now where they're putting sensors all over the homes of seniors. My wife thinks it's really creepy. I think it's really cool because the sensor, just the way the Japanese automatically generated messages to stop the trains, the system will call me and say, your mom, it's now 11 o'clock in the morning, your mom hasn't broken the sensor between her bedroom and the kitchen. Maybe you should check on her and make sure that she's okay. We're going to do an iPad app where you see a very human picture, a story like this about my mother, and you can basically touch the corner and peel back and then see the data underneath and understand what was done to be able to collect this. Again, I'm sorry for going so fast here. And then finally, what the results are going to be a book. We're going to deliver 30,000 copies of the book the same morning all over the world to people we think should be thinking about this and dealing with it. It's amazing. And you think that half of our congressmen don't have passports. I mean, the people that are our governors do not have the information they need to be making decisions for us. We're going to do outdoor exhibits. We're building a mission control room for the media. And we're hoping that the media is going to pay a lot of attention to this. I'm going to turn it back to Andreas.